welcome to Live and Let's Dice. My name is Jules Gill and I am back with something very exciting. You might have seen my part 1 of the review of the Saga of the Beast Psychic Awakening for the Space Wolves, and now we get to move into my newest love, the Orks. Oh my god, the Orks. As I was saying before, the Orks are a kind of strange army to collect because not only do they have the most inherent comedy within them, but in terms of the meta, they are so swingy. There's kind of like 2 or 3 really viable competitive lists for the Orks, and people were growing a bit bored of them because it was very un-Orky the way you had to play them. Very long range stuff with mech guns and shock attack guns and stuff like that, when really you wanted to be getting into the thicker battle and having a laugh and chopping things with your mates. We also got a strange release with our Ork Codex that came out, which was all of the buggies and the speed freaks that came out with it. You had some really good stuff, all good potential, like the Shock Jump Dragster and the Mega Track Scrap Jet and the Deathkiller Wartrike, but none of them were really viable in a competitive sense. A, because they were too expensive. Luckily, Chapter Approved took them down a bit, but also because of the fact that the synergy of them didn't really sort of hit home. There wasn't any particular reason to use them other than just they were a pretty model. After reading the Saga of the Beast and the Ork extension of their stuff, my goodness, I think that we will potentially see a big change in the army lists that are coming out, if nothing else, because it will be more fun to try them. Now, everyone is talking about Ghazghkull Thraka. Now, with good reason, because his model is absolutely stonkingly beautiful. But unfortunately, his point value is also stonkingly expensive. He's 285 with including Waagh, 285 points. Now he was 235 before, and you've got to ask yourself, do his new stat line abilities merit that increase in price? Well, let's have a quick look at it. I know that his stat lines are already out at the moment, and you can I'll put the image of it up so you can take a look with me there. Now he's got Mork's Raw, which is an Assault 12, Strength 5, -1 damage, with a Ballistic skill of 5, and obviously, it ain't going to be hitting as much as you think Assault 12 will be, because Orky shooting is swingy as hell. But having the AP -1 in this game of very highly armoured stuff is going to be beneficial. Gork's Claw is fantastic. Strength ×2, which means he will have potentially Strength 14 if he's on full bracket when he's going in, and 4 damage and AP -4. That's fantastic. That will chew through armour and most important characters and infantry that you've got there. You've got the classic stuff, which is they've changed his Great War ability now, which is that they add 1 to the attacks only if they made a charge, rather than an inherent one, which was always +1 to attacks of Ork units around him. He's got his 4-up invulnerable save. He does have, can only lose a maximum of 4 wounds in each phase. Now, a lot of people immediately were like, that's amazing, he's going to do really well. And then, obviously, the cracks started to appear when it was only per phase, not per turn. Now, if you have a very good phase, then doing 4 wounds to him in the psychic phase isn't particularly hard if you can target him. Doing 4 wounds in the combat phase, when admittedly he does have toughness 7, which means that you'll be like chomping through at a slower rate, but it's not impossible. And in the shooting phase, if you're playing like Ultramarines and he's tied up back out shooting, there's lots of enemies that can drop out and still shoot him, and he doesn't have the ability to hide behind his boys now that he's at wounds 12. Does mean that doing 4 wounds per phase isn't actually that hard. It is hard, and he will chuck up a lot of attention, but think of it this way. Is he the new distraction Carnifex for Orks? Is he going to be that guy that you plop on the table, know that he'll die, and just kind of be okay with it because it will put all of the boys into combat range before he does? And he can't be dejumped. That's a huge one. You'll have to use the teleporter for that, unless they retcon that and say that he can, or that he can't. I don't really know how it's going to work with that one, but still, I'm getting him because it looks like a fantastic model, but will I be playing him in a competitive list? Don't know. And I'll show you why, because there are some strats that actually make war bosses potentially more viable and almost as good in combat as him for much less of a price. But that's Gaz. We won't focus on him all that much because there's actually a lot that's changed for the Orks. Now, everyone's been banging on about combat doctrines, about all of these, the Space Marines, all these special like subcultures and blah, blah, blah. Well, we also get subcultures now because we get specialist mobs, which means that instead of taking things like Evil Sun, Death Skulls, and the Bad Moons, and having those generic ones, you can basically take a detachment and replace that with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 new ones. That means we get 8 new crazy rules, and some of them are pretty good, some of them are questionable, as in I can't really see how viable they'll be other than just for a banter list. But what we're going to do is we're going to select 3 of them, because again, I'm always worried about Games Workshop knocking on my door. So let's choose 3 then. We're going to choose Boom Boys, we're going to choose Tin Heads, and we're going to choose... I'll do 4 because there's the Grot one. We'll do the Grot mobs and then we'll do Mad Boys. So we'll start with Boom Boys, whose special ability is Blow It Up. Improve the strength and armor penetration characteristics of rockets and stick bomb weapons, and then it lists all the different ones. You've got like rocket launchers, stick bomb, lobbers, and cannons, and all these other stuff, kill cannons, death cannons. What you do there is you increase the AP by 1. Now, that's pretty mad, because Orks have had a very tough time with anti-armor stuff. It's not that we don't have it, and it's not that we can't absolutely chew through it in close combat. It's just that from a range, it's very difficult, because you'll have to use tank busters or the very inaccurate Orky shooting, which, as I've just mentioned, is inaccurate and Orky. So this, doing extra AP damage to actually make sure that when you do score those hits, it actually goes through, that's very important against the very toughly armoured stuff there. Very good. So imagine chucking that with a load of tank busters. Would it be as good as having your Death Skulls 6-up invulnerable save, and the reroll to hit, and the reroll to wound, and the reroll to the damage? Don't know on that one. So we'll move now over to the Grot mob, which is called Cheeky Zoggers. Now, if you have a lot of Gretchen, like I'm pretty sure that Ork players do by the bucket load, you might actually want to use this, because as a banter unit, like a detachment of like 2 weird boys and then 60, 90 Grots who are getting ballistic skill 3 because of the fact that when you put them in groups of more than 20, they get a rule which adds 1 to their ballistic skill. Shock horror, you're taking out people on ballistic skill 3. Amazing. This gives those Gretchen a 6-up invulnerable save. That's fine. Like, it's laughable that they would get it, but I'm fine with that. But they also get to re-roll hits of 1 when they're attacking vehicles, because as you can imagine, they're climbing up stuff, ripping off circuitry, puking up, pissing, and doing whatever else that Grots do to vehicles. And that is a comedy detachment. I'm pretty much going to guarantee that I will always take that, because I always take Grots and Gretchen just so I can fill out CP fielding, so I felt farming even. So why wouldn't I want to give them a little bit of extra protection and a little bit of comedy damage? I mean, some of my Grots, they've taken out Farseers before. They did wounds to Land Raiders. I'm happy with how they're doing, so they're going to do even better now. Let's move over to Tin Heads. Yeah, let's move over to Tin Heads now, which is Crush and Crump. Now this will be used. I cannot imagine that this will not be used, because Killer Cans, Death Dreads, Mega Armor, Morkanauts, Gorkanauts, and Stompers, when they are resolving an attack with a melee weapon, you add 1 to the hit roll. Now, Killer Cans have always been an interesting one, because their leadership is absolute bunk, which means that they potentially can run away, but when they hit hard. The problem is that they have Grot weapon skill of 5, which this means that they'll be hitting on a 4. Now, Stompers and Gorkanauts and other stuff, when they're in close combat, you want them to hit because you've sunk a goddamn amount of points into them. And having a Stomper get +1 to hit with its melee weapons, that's going to cream everything. A huge fan of this. Will be used. Hands down, this definitely will be used. And we're going to end on this one with Mad Boys, which is... at the start of each battle round, you roll a d3 and you apply a random battle trait for this. So it's very swingy and orky, and I love it, and I definitely will use this as well. If you roll a 1, they are moronics, which means that when resolving an attack that targets a unit with this subculture, you add 1 to the saving throw. So that puts your Orks, which are t-shirt saves, to a 5-up, which basically it mitigates a lot of the AP minusing that's going on in 8th edition, so that could be quite useful. If they roll a 2, they get nutters, which means that they automatically pass morale tests. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, well, Orks are fearless because you get mob rule and you also get to use their leadership of nearby Ork units. That's true, but only in the first battle round. Because by the time that you've moved stuff around, used the jump, get people into position, they're usually much more split up than you'd like them to be. And of course, turn one for us on the enemy side is us just basically taking a shovel and putting a load of models back in the box. So, meaning that they will be able to pass morale tests when it counts, when the numbers are getting a bit lower, that's super important. And finally, frenzies add one to the strength characteristics of models in a unit with this subculture. Now, I'm not saying that this is a potentially viable tactic, but it could be a good one, which is the fact that if you put Scar Boys, which is it a Goth one? Yeah, I think it is a Goth one. If you're running Goths and you add this, you get an extra +1 to their strength as is. It's a thing you take before the battle starts. If you potentially roll this as well, that means that you're rolling strength 6 attacks. It's obviously very situational and you may not get it, but strength 6 attacks with 30 boys or whatever amount you manage to get into combat, that's going to do a lot of damage indeed. So the specialist mobs are a great way to add a lot more variety into your Ork army, which already has a ton of variety and will shape the way that bit lists are built. You're not going to see just people running the exact same stuff. They're actually going to try out these new stuff as well and actually probably get a lot from it. But let's move over to the custom jobs. Now, custom jobs, I feel sorry for anyone who went out there and bought a Mech Boy workshop when it was first released, because it's quite crap. You waste a turn and the rewards were never that great. But now, Games Workshop have addressed this by giving you tons of extra custom jobs. After reading this though, the one thing I don't understand is it says here, if your army includes one or more Mech Boy workshops, you can give one of the following custom jobs to an Ork unit in your army. In addition, you can take custom jobs by using the custom job stratagem, which I'll detail in a minute. And all of the custom jobs that you get, that you must include, must be different and given to different units. Now, what this implies is that you don't need to be within the Mech Boy workshop, the range or stop your units to get a custom job. It just says if you take a Mech Boy workshop, meaning that you plonk it on the battlefield, you immediately get one of these powers. Now, they're not all like game changing, but there are some pretty interesting ones, and all of them mainly relate to the new or newer buggies and vehicles that were released alongside Speed Freaks. So for example, the souped up special, the Boomdacker Snaz Wagon, gets a new gun profile, which is called the souped up special, has a range of 30, assault 15, again Orky shooting. It's strength 4, AP -1, and 1 damage. That AP -1 is worth more than money can buy in this, so I'm a huge fan of that. The gyroscopic whirligig means that if you use this, you can use the shock tunnel when you're advancing, even if you didn't roll a 4-up, and you don't suffer the mortal wound when you finish. So imagine that you've got a mobile, effectively a las cannon platform, because you get the +2 to hit with its squig targeting system and other stuff that's there. It means that you can move, shoot, advance, put it any way you need, and then just blast the living hell out of everything, and then potentially escape as well, which I'll cover later on. The corkscrew, which is only for the Mega Track Scrapjet, the first time this unit finishes a consolidation move in each fight phase, it can immediately fight again. That is very useful when you consider the anti-vehicle properties of the Scrapjet. So being able to take it in, do a lot of damage with the nose drill that it's got, and then move into something else, you could cause absolute havoc with that, especially if you use the teleporter strat with the Speed Freaks, which all deploy as one unit, which means that you could potentially take 2 or 3, I don't know what their power level is, so they might be able to get them in under 20, and have the Deathkiller Wartrike able to allow them to advance and charge at the same time, plus take him as evil sons, and you get the rerolls to charge. You're probably going to make it into combat, and you're probably going to do a lot of damage with one of these equipped to one of your boys. There are a few more, but I won't detail them here, but all of these custom jobs definitely appeal to Speed Freaks users, and probably will sell a fair few Mech Boy workshops, so good going, GW there. As you might expect, there are a lot of new psychic powers as well, because there's Waaaagh energy crackling all over the place. And every single clan now gets a unique special psychic power. I'll pick 3 of them as per usual out of the ones that I've got here, and I'll show you the ones that I feel could probably be the most useful. And the ones that I picked are the Death Skulls, the Bad Moons, and the Evil Suns, 3 of which that I play on the regular. Now the Death Skulls have got Maniacal Seizure, charge of 7. If manifested, select one enemy unit within 18 inches of the Psyker until the start of your next psychic phase. When resolving an attack made by that unit, you subtract 1 from the hit roll, and when resolving an attack by a friendly Death Skulls model against that unit, you improve the armor penetration of the weapon characteristic by 1. Now, this suddenly makes Death Skulls a lot more viable for foot slogging and not just at the back with looters shooting death guns. It makes death guns amazing as well. It means that potentially they are now firing on AP -2 with 2 damage flat. That's very, very cool. But imagine having boys that now finally have AP -1 choppers. Ooh, that's potentially dangerous. 120 attacks? 100 would be more than that, wouldn't it? Now 4 attacks times 30, because if they've got green tide, yeah, you would be laughing your way to the bank with that one. Obviously you have to get within range, but still, 18 inches, and it means that you have to move your weird boy up, but still, I think that's very, very cool. The Bad Moons get Gleaming Gear, which has a warp charge of 6, and you pick a friendly Bad Moon unit within 18 inches of the Psyker, and until the next psychic phase, your psychic phase, when resolving an attack made against that unit, you add 1 to the saving throw. Now that's really, really cool, because a lot of the problems that we have are, we have a lot of cool toys, but they don't usually make it there, and if you put this on your boy, it does mean that you'll be able to, a bit more survivability is always good, I think, but if you put it on, say, your Dakka Jet, and you will want that to survive, that's saving on a 3-up now. Power armor saves, not potentially that great when you consider everything that can shoot it down, but still, I think it was really cool. I think it was really cool for only a 6 charge as well. And finally, Evil Suns, and I love this one, Visions in the Smoke. Visions in the Smoke has a warp charge value of 6. If manifested, select one friendly Evil Suns vehicle within 12 inches of this Psyker, and you can only select a unit with wound characteristics of 18 or more if the psychic test was over 9. So that means that if you want to apply it to like a Ghazghkull or a Stomper, you're going to have to roll pretty high for that one. Not a problem if you're surrounded by boys and you get the +3 cast. Until the start of your next psychic phase, when resolving an attack made by a model in that unit, you can re-roll the hit roll. Ooh dear, that's really good. Again, I was saying about the Death Skulls have AP -1 choppers. Imagine having boys that can pretty much guarantee that you're going to get all of those hits going through. That's going to translate pretty well to some damage, because it's death by 1,000 cuts. You can definitely do well with Orks on that one. There are more psychic powers there, but I'll leave that to you lovely people to check out. Finally, before my throat gives out, we will talk about the Ork stratagems. And again, there's a lot of new ones here. There's two full pages of just beautiful strats, but I will only detail a few of them because some of them have already been leaked online by the community and some of them have been put up by Games Workshop themselves. So what I'm going to pick is, we'll start with the Grot Bumper, which is for 1 CP, you use this stratagem in your opponent's shooting phase after it has made an attack with a ranged weapon and successfully wounded a Boondaka Snazwagon. The saving throw is automatically passed. Each unit can only benefit from this stratagem once per battle, so if it gets hit with like a las cannon or something equally devastating, then that means you basically are holding up the Grot shield, but it's the Grot Bumper, and it takes the hit for you. So for 1 CP, you get a free pass. Fantastic. I will see that being used a lot for people who run the Snazwagons, and as I've said before with the Mech Boy stuff, you might want that synergy going across on that, and that can be very cool. We'll also go over here. Full speed, lads. Use this stratagem in your charge phase after charging with an Ork Biker or Death Killer War Trike. Until the end of that turn, you add 1 to the unit's strength characteristic. That's pretty insane when you consider the strength of the Death Killer is already pretty high, and the Ork Bikers, putting them at strength 5 is very useful when you consider that they're going to be the frontline glass spear charging. Fantastic. Huge fan of that. Patch up. Use this stratagem at the start of any turn. Select 1 Morkanaut, Ghazghkull, or Stomper from your army. Until the end of that turn, the model is considered to have double the number of wounds remaining for the purpose of determining what row to use on its damage table. That's mad. I know it's not as good as, say, like, what is it, the Ironstone, whatever the Iron Hands have, where they can, their ability where they pop up on the damage thing for what brackets they can use. It's not as good as that because it's A, not innate, and B, only applies to the damage table. But having the offensive capability of the Stompers not weakened, because they will take a lot of damage because they are going to be the primary thing that people want to get rid of, when it finally makes it into combat, being able to absolutely ruin stuff. Big fan, huge. And finally, we'll end on Unstoppable Momentum. For 2 CP, you use this stratagem in your charge phase when an Orc unit from your army has finished a charge move and dealt 1 or more mortal wounds to an enemy unit. If that Orc unit is no longer within 1 inch of an enemy unit, it can immediately be chosen to charge with again. Now this is very situational because you need that to be a mortal wound that is the thing that's done to them, but it does mean that potentially for 2 CP, you can go there, bubble wrap them straight into something else, protect from enemy fire. Strategically situational, but if it happens, you will be so grateful that that strat exists because you will be spreading through their lines and absolutely dominating them. And that, my friends, as they say, is that. There aren't any more relics that have been added in, but still, there have been a lot of additions for the Orcs, and what it's basically doing is addressing all of the shortcomings that we didn't really know we had until the new models of the Speed Freaks were added in. Everyone was expecting them to be the new game changer, to really improve the Orcs, but what it was just a bit of a, well, that's a nice model, it'll look good on my shelf. This makes all of your vehicles much more potent, and it allows them more survivability, more damage, more moves. Your weird boys are now doing extra psychic powers as well, which are going to benefit in extremely fun ways. Is it going to change the way that the lists are built? I totally think so, because boys is always going to be a thing, but hopefully we'll see people moving away from the shock attack guns and things like that to try out the things that were potentially just not worth taking because of how expensive or not that great they were in combat or shooting. So hopefully this will change that. Don't get me wrong, I still use the shock attack guns and I still use the mech guns because they're cheap as chips and really worth it. But am I going to build an entire speed freak army to run like Evil Sons or have new mech boy stuff added to them? Of course I am, because that's the Orky thing to do. Even though the expression is boys over toys, sometimes when the gubbins are shiny enough, you gotta give them a try. But that's been the Saga of the Beast Orc side. I hope you enjoyed that, my friends. Please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. Give me a follow. Give me a quick follow at RetroJ with a 0. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel for more 40k, Age of Sigmar, all things Games Workshop, and beyond here on Live and Let's Dice. Take care of yourself. I hope you're doing well.